Power doesn't change people. It reveals them. For 22 years, I built my company from nothing. Not from investors, not from family money, not from luck. I built it one exhausted day at a time. I knew every department, every process, every struggle. And I never forgot what it felt like to be invisible. That's why what happened 3 months ago nearly broke my heart. Because the biggest threat to my company wasn't a competitor. It wasn't a recession. It wasn't technology. It was one arrogant manager who believed some people deserved respect and others didn't. So I made a decision, a crazy one. I traded my tailored suits for janitor overalls. I hid my identity, and for 30 days, I cleaned toilets inside my own headquarters. What I discovered changed everything, and one manager learned a lesson he'll never forget. My name is David Lawson, and this is the story of how I fired the most powerful manager in my company. 3 months earlier, my assistant knocked on my office door. "Mr. Lawson, do you have a minute?" I looked up from my laptop. Of course. She entered carrying a stack of papers. Normally, Emma was confident, professional, direct. Today, she looked uneasy. That immediately got my attention. "What is it?" I asked. She placed the papers on my desk. "Employee feedback reports." I nodded. Every quarter we reviewed anonymous employee surveys. Most executives skimmed them. I read every single one. The reports helped me understand what was really happening inside the company. I flipped through the first few pages. Then my smile disappeared. The same name kept appearing. Again, and again, and again. Richard Steele, Regional Operations Manager, one of our highest performing executives, one of our most profitable leaders, and, apparently, one of our biggest problems. I continued reading. Creates hostile work environment. Belittles support staff. Treats cleaners like they're beneath him. Public humiliation of employees. Uses fear to motivate. Constant intimidation. My stomach tightened. Richard had been with the company for 7 years. His numbers were phenomenal. Revenue growth, efficiency, profit margins. Everything looked excellent. But numbers don't tell the whole story. People do. "How long has this been happening?" I asked. Emma hesitated. "Longer than anyone realized." "Why wasn't I informed sooner?" "Because nobody wanted to challenge him." I leaned back. That answer bothered me even more. Fear is contagious. When employees become afraid to speak up, culture begins to die. I looked out the window overlooking our headquarters. Hundreds of employees worked below. Most executives see workers. I see families, mothers, fathers, dreams, bills, people who trust us with their careers. That trust matters. And according to these reports, someone was abusing it. A week later, Richard sat across from me. Confident, polished, expensive suit, perfect smile, the picture of success. "Your numbers are exceptional," I said. "They always are." He grinned. "I demand excellence." I studied him carefully. "Some employees describe your management style as intimidating." His expression didn't change, not even slightly. "I hold people accountable. There's a difference. Not everyone appreciates high standards." Interesting answer. No concern, no curiosity, no self-reflection. Just justification. I continued. "Several complaints mentioned disrespect toward support staff." This time he laughed. Actually laughed. "Support staff?" "Janitors, receptionists, maintenance workers." He shrugged. "With respect, David." That was the first red flag. Most executives called me Mr. Lawson. Richard used my first name, not out of friendship, out of ego. He continued. "People need to earn respect." I stared at him. "And cleaners haven't earned it?" "That's not what I said." But it's what you meant. He shifted slightly. Look, someone has to maintain standards. I nodded slowly. The meeting ended shortly afterward. But something felt wrong. Very wrong. Richard knew exactly how to behave around executives, around investors, around people who could influence his career. The real question was, how did he behave around people who couldn't? That evening, I visited our headquarters after hours. The building felt different at night, quieter, more honest. I walked through empty hallways. Then I noticed an elderly janitor mopping the floor. His name tag read, Miguel. He looked exhausted. I approached him. Long shift? He smiled warmly. Always. We talked for nearly 30 minutes. About work, family, life, and eventually, Richard. Miguel's smile faded. I shouldn't say anything. You can. He hesitated, then spoke softly. Some people only see uniforms. I knew exactly what he meant. That sentence stayed with me all night. Some people only see uniforms. Not human beings, not fathers, not mothers, not stories, just positions, just status, just hierarchy. And suddenly, I had an idea. A ridiculous idea, an uncomfortable idea, the kind of idea that changes everything. What if I stopped being CEO? What if I became invisible? What if I spent a month seeing my company through the eyes of the people nobody noticed? The next morning, I informed only 3 people. My assistant, the board chairman, and head of security. Everyone else would believe I was taking an extended overseas business trip. In reality, I was about to become a janitor. My disguise wasn't elaborate. Gray hair dye, glasses, different posture, simple work clothes, a fake name, Daniel Brooks. Age 62, part-time cleaning contractor. The transformation was surprisingly effective. Nobody looked twice, because people rarely look closely at janitors. That alone was revealing. On my first day, I reported at 6 a.m. Miguel was there. So were several other cleaners. None recognized me. They welcomed me immediately. No judgment, no arrogance, no status games, just kindness. Funny how the lowest paid employees often possess the highest character. For the first week, I simply observed how people treated receptionists, security guards, maintenance workers, kitchen staff. Most employees were respectful. Some were indifferent. Then there was Richard. The first encounter happened on a Tuesday morning. I was cleaning a restroom near the executive wing. Richard entered, without acknowledging me, without greeting me, without even making eye contact. Nothing unusual there. But as he left, he dropped a paper towel directly onto the freshly cleaned floor, then looked at me and smiled. Not a friendly smile, a challenge, a test, a reminder of where he believed I belonged. "Missed a spot," he said, and walked away. I stared at the paper towel, then picked it up, because my job wasn't to prove who I was. My job was to discover who he was, and he was just getting started. Over the next 3 weeks, I witnessed things that shocked me. Not because they were dramatic, because they were consistent. Cruelty isn't always loud. Sometimes it's casual. Richard interrupted receptionists, dismissed maintenance requests, mocked cleaners, ignored security personnel. He treated anyone beneath him on the organizational chart as if they barely existed. One afternoon, I witnessed something worse. A young receptionist accidentally transferred a call incorrectly. A minor mistake. Nothing serious. Richard publicly humiliated her in front of 20 employees. The young woman fought back tears, and Richard walked away feeling victorious. That moment told me everything. Strong leaders correct mistakes. Weak leaders embarrass people. The difference matters. The evidence kept growing. I documented everything, dates, times, witnesses, patterns, because eventually there would be accountability. Then came Sophie, a summer intern, 19 years old, bright, ambitious, hard-working, the kind of employee every company hopes to find. One morning I found her crying quietly in a stairwell. I sat beside her. "What happened?" She wiped her eyes. "It's stupid. It doesn't seem stupid." She hesitated, then whispered, "Mr. Steele said I'd never succeed because I'm too sensitive." My jaw tightened. Nobody deserves that, especially not a teenager trying to start her career. "What do you think?" I asked. She looked confused. "About what? Do you think you'll succeed?" After a moment, she nodded. "Yes, then that's what matters." Weeks later, Sophie became one of the strongest performers in her department. Not because Richard was right, because he was wrong. People grow when encouraged, not when crushed. Near the end of the month, I decided to conduct one final test, a simple one. I intentionally spilled a bucket of water near the executive elevators. Nothing dangerous, nothing harmful, just enough to create inconvenience. Richard arrived moments later, saw the spill, saw me, and exploded. Not because of the mess, because he believed he finally had someone powerless to attack. His voice echoed through the hallway. Employees stopped and stared. The rant lasted nearly 3 minutes. Every insult, every accusation, every ounce of contempt. And then he crossed a line. "You people are all the same." The hallway became silent. Even Richard realized what he'd said, but instead of apologizing, he doubled down. That's when I knew. The investigation was over. Monday morning, executive board meeting, all senior leadership present, including Richard, confident as ever. The chairman opened the meeting, then smiled. "We have a special guest joining us." Richard looked confused. The door opened. I entered. Not as Daniel, not as a janitor, as David Lawson, CEO. Silence. Richard's face turned pale. At first he didn't understand. Then he did, and the color drained from his skin, completely. I placed a folder on the table. Inside were weeks of observations, witness statements, documentation, evidence. I looked directly at him. "Good morning, Richard." Nobody moved, nobody spoke. The room felt frozen. "I've spent the last month working in this building." His eyes widened. "As a janitor." The silence became unbearable. Every executive stared at Richard, then at me, then back at Richard. I continued, "And I learned more about our culture in 30 days than I had in 3 years. Richard tried to speak. Nothing came out. For the first time in his career, he was powerless. I stood at the head of the table. "Do you know what surprised me most?" Nobody answered. It wasn't the disrespect. It wasn't the arrogance. It wasn't even the bullying. I paused. It was how predictable it was. I looked directly at Richard. "You treated powerful people with respect. You treated vulnerable people with contempt. That isn't leadership. That's performance." The room remained silent. Every word landed. Heavy, precise, unavoidable. I continued. "The true measure of character isn't how you treat people who can help you. It's how you treat people who can't." Several executives lowered their eyes, because they understood. This lesson wasn't only for Richard. It was for everyone, including me, especially me. Leadership demands constant self-examination. Nobody is immune to arrogance. Nobody. Richard finally found his voice. "I can change." Maybe he could, maybe he couldn't. But leadership positions require trust. And trust had been broken. Repeatedly, deliberately, over years, not days, years. I nodded slowly. I hope you do. Then I slid a document across the table. Termination papers. The room remained silent. Richard stared at them. His empire had collapsed. Not because of poor performance, not because of bad numbers, because character matters, because culture matters, because people matter, and no amount of profit can compensate for cruelty. Eventually he signed, then left, without another word. The door closed behind him, and just like that, it was over, or so I thought. 3 months later, something unexpected happened. The company improved, not financially, emotionally. Departments collaborated more. Employees smiled more. Turnover dropped. Productivity increased naturally. Not through fear, through trust. Funny how that works. People perform better when they're respected. Who would have guessed? One afternoon, Sophie knocked on my office door. The former intern. She'd accepted a full-time position. I just wanted to say thank you. For what? She smiled. For believing in me. After she left, I sat quietly for a moment, thinking, because that's what leadership really is. Not authority, not titles, not corner offices. Belief. Giving people reasons to believe in themselves, giving people opportunities to grow, giving people dignity. Today, Miguel still works here. So does the receptionist Richard, humiliated. So do hundreds of people whose names most executives never learn. I know their names, because names matter. People matter. And if there's one thing this experience taught me, it's that every organization eventually reflects what it tolerates. If you tolerate arrogance, you get arrogance. If you tolerate cruelty, you get cruelty. If you tolerate disrespect, you get disrespect. But if you protect kindness, kindness grows, culture grows, people grow. The greatest leaders aren't the ones who make others feel small. They're the ones who make others feel seen. So remember this: the next person you pass in a hallway, the cleaner, the security guard, the receptionist, the delivery driver, the maintenance worker, they have a story, a family, dreams, struggles, a life every bit as valuable as yours. Treat them accordingly. Because character is revealed when nobody important is watching, and one day, you may discover that somebody important was watching after all.